As already mentioned, this talk we're going to do is going to be about professional education in higher education. And we is a group of three. You can see it standing up front, so slightly sweating. But it's Nicola from architecture, Andrea from business, and myself from astronomy, physics, but associated to trainee teachers and teachers in general. So we're sort of looking at this aspect, and doing so we've sort of developed as a medium of communication and summing up our work, developed a small website in which we sort of upload what we're doing, collect the data and present it. So we're in a way developing already a report while we're working. And I just thought that our theme picture that we put on there captures a bit of an aspect of professionalism, because it can be seen in many different from many different perspectives. And here it's an accountant that's more worried about how this person is going to pay for getting his dog put down, where obviously that's the wrong question to ask if somebody comes to you. So just a brief outline, what we're going to try to get across with this talk is give you a brief, very short introduction into professionalism, very short, and then focus into the literature, how they define professionalism and how some of our ideas we're going to use are coming out of the literature. And then further on, looking at the different bodies of professionalism that we're going to analyze, and then a case study that we're going to base around our further work, which then will continue on into sort of three strands. We've summed up our field studies, and then in the end we're just drawing some conclusions out of that, or summing up our work as it stands. That's why there are only 2 bullet points. Very essential, very brief. Professionalism as it's introduced. Initially, you've got many different aspects in university, many different subjects you can study, and some are classically seen as being a professional subject you study. You would go and study medicine, you would study law, or you would study architecture. These are things that are intrinsically located and put towards a professional area, where, for example, if you study astronomy, somebody wouldn't take that as a classical subject for a professional career, in a sense, that will be then further developed. Is that true? How will we develop that? And then our research, as we're looking at it, will be then based in sort of our diverse group, because coming from these 3 different aspects, we can actually use a lot of our knowledge and our capabilities in these different areas to draw together something interesting out of our knowledge basis to then target this area of professionalism in higher education. So I think it's quite important to then get a bit of a handle on this slightly chaotic idea of professionalism. Because if you delve into the literature, professionalism as such is understood in a lot of ways, and as buzzwords are always introduced, there suddenly appear loads of different words that are slightly related to each other, but slightly different as well. So actually, if you look at the area of professionalism, you come across 3 terms that are dubbed professionalism, professionality, and professionalization. And if you, I've just listed some of the literature we've used to base that on. If you actually look at professionalism, what is understood in professionalism is more how a professional body is seen, its status, it's related to pay, income, and sort of all the responsibility it has towards and life it's seen in the society it's embedded in. And professionality is then more linked towards what for skills, what for knowledge, how do you conduct yourself. That's something that initially you would associate with professionalism, but it's dubbed here as professionality. And then if you look further into professionalism, you come across what's called professionalization. And that's actually the process of initially, say, a semi-professional body trying to be recognized as a full professional body. This is sort of trying to progress towards that point. And actually that is trying to progress to that point towards whom? Towards that body. Well, they want to see themselves as professionals so they can define it, but actually it is within the context of society. And now these are obviously very different approaches and slightly different definitions of professionality, professionalism. And what we have drawn out of that, I've tried to visualize in this small diagram, that actually already picking apart professionalism and professionality is very impossible, because both of them are intrinsically linked. So if you want to be seen as a professional body by society, hence further professionalism, you have to go back into educating the members coming in and making them more professional, hence giving them knowledge, skills, and then furthering what's called professionality. And this is always interlinked. You can't get one without the other, we feel. So it's an ever-drawing circle, which I've tried to put in here, this cyclic process. But this cyclic process doesn't stand on its own. This cyclic process is sort of embedded in society. It is striving towards being recognized to improve and adapt to the social setting and be recognized as a professional body. Because if it's recognized as a professional body in society, that society is never stationary. That will change. It will have different ideas, and therefore its ideas will change, and therefore it will change its opinion towards your professional body. And you want to adapt with that, so therefore you drive your cycle onwards to go along the direction of professionalization. So this is overall this whole process, this ongoing process, this ever-changing process is what we sort of in our further work have understood as professionalism as we understand it. Bear in mind that's slightly different to what's mentioned in here. Then, if you then are happy with this definition, if you then look at different types or classes of professionalism, you come across a broad range where probably you're all familiar with the initial, you can see so from the literature, say it's a very classical definition of professionalism. These boys in white, this more or less small group or masculine group that is very dominant, and they determine what's right, what's wrong. If you don't oblige them, you don't belong to this in-group. So this is a very classical form. But actually, if you then progress from there, you can see in the 70s sort of introduced, then this further analysis of professionalism has been two different poles. So you can have this restrictive professionalism, which is learning by doing. While you're just chucked into your job, you'll find out what to do and how to behave, and this other in-group will tell you exactly what to do. And on the other pole is what we sort of extended. So you give a framework of knowledge and theory to support your work. So from a teacher's perspective, you get a lot of educational theory being put in there, where beforehand it would have been a lot go into the classroom and find out by yourself. Actually, if you then look at that, you will have to extend it even more, and that's sort of a fairly recently what we call an active professionalism. And this is very close to our model as we see it. It's professionalism as it's seen within its social context. So it's well aware of its responsibility to society. It's well aware of ethical issues. It's well aware of its status in society and responsibility. So this is quite close to how we understand professionalism as its ever-striving process of becoming a professional body and remaining a professional body. And while looking through that, you can then, when we're talking about education, then look at different models of education. And Ball and Cohen have talked about the changes and improvements in education, and they focused on teacher education and have brought up the important idea of CPD, continual improvement of their practice of practitioners in teaching. But you can see 1999 a little bit outdated by now, because already that's happened. So you can see this is sort of a good summary of how education has changed and adapted to allow people to become more reflective practitioners and really be aware of how they work as a practitioner and improve. And further, the Alba has also included then which models can be used to do that. For example, it can be you can include things like problem-based learning and workplace learning as well, where you're really looking at real-world situations, either in a university or out there, and gaining experience. And this a lot links into how society sees you, the responsibility, the ethics come in there as well. Again, focusing very closely on what we actually see as professionalism. And more of that is then just refined in the last point as well. So, from all that, we've then drawn our really spot-on research question, which is, how is professionalism approached in higher education? So we're not really interested in, is it exactly taught, or is it assumed to happen there. That's why we just kept it very broad. How is it approached in higher education specifically? Because just going through the literature, I felt from the teaching perspective as well, there's a lot of literature and work that has been done about how does the professional body see itself being the professional body with other practitioners feeding in, and for teachers as well, the government feeding in. But actually, on ground level, sort of this step in higher education, how do students feel that what professionalism is? Do they see this as somehow relevant or not? That's why we're linking how professionalism approach in higher education.
Okay, that's nice. So obviously the title has professional and education, and in our professional bodies, the outside body actually tells the university what we should teach, what it's all about, and sometimes even how we should go about it. But when you look at these professional bodies, they are actually also a bit different. For example, we have included the veterinary surgeons in that because those are going to be, that's our case study. So we know a little bit about that. So that would be the fourth profession that comes into it. And architecture and veterinary surgeons are possibly the more traditional professional bodies. While and they are definitely defined, they define their codes from the outside within the so from the professional point, from the profession, those people who are practitioners. Business management has now started to write up a code of conduct for their professional bodies, but there are so many different different strands then of type of professions within that. It's a bit difficult to be very precise when it comes to certain issues. Teaching is also now standardized and has something like that, the quality teaching standard, but that is actually written by the government. So there's a different group, interest group, which is then defining what should be taught in university. So far we have also found what we are listing are the main kind of source materials that we're using for that. So for architecture we have the RIBA Code of Professional Conduct, which is for professionals. But then we also have within architecture prescriptions of qualifications, which are actually exactly the educational things that what we need to teach at the university. And how it's being structured, which kind of years, what kind of work practice has to happen in between. And interestingly enough, this is just changing from the next academic year onwards. These have been rewritten and have also balanced different issues which are usually part of code of conduct. For business management, that educational part doesn't exist. For the teaching, I'm not so sure whether I think it's actually more quite interesting within that. For the veterinary surgeons, I still need to look for that. So far, I've only found the code of professional conduct, but there must be some educational piece. Could be that there is an educational piece around. If you then compare these, what they are dealing with is also quite interesting. So, for example, for veterinary surgeons, it's very important to look at knowledge and competence. But then there are also issues of ethics, for example. And that basically then polarizes these two subject areas that we find in professional education. Is it just about knowledge and facts and you need to have technical skills and the competence, or is it also the kind of person you are, that kind of, are you honest, loyal, I mean, do you treat people with respect, for example, what you're not supposed to do? And we have that in architecture and veterinary surgeons, you find both of these aspects. In business management, you don't find the competence. I mean, that's interesting, makes you think, but so far, possibly because it has so many strands of subjects, this one is basically about the ethical area of the code. Yeah, I think that is basically, I think, mainly what it is.